Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for attending. Welcome to the meeting of the Economy, Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm delighted and obliged to inform, I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence, and we have apologies from one of the portfolio holders, which is Julian Dean. Dan Morris also isn't here, and I don't know about Chris Schofield. Does anybody know about Chris Schofield, whether he's coming? No, okay. Thank you. Do we have any other apologies, Tim?
I'm happy with this, Chair.
No. Okay. I'd like to go round the room now and get everyone to introduce themselves. If we start with you, Tim.
Good morning. I'm the committee officer standing in for Sarah Townsend.
Steve?
Steve.
Introduce.
I'm sorry. Steve Davenport. Very good. Peggy Lewis.
Nick Hignott, my Valley Ward.
James McHugh, Assistant Director of Homes and Communities. Claire Braddock, with the Scrutiny Officer.
Kate Halliday, Councillor for Bellevue and Chair of the River Quality Task and Finish Group.
Tom Dodds, the Council Scrutiny Manager.
Joyce Barrow, Chair of this committee.
Paul Wynne, Shropshire Council for Priest Ward and Chairman of the North Committee.
Mostly, I represent that ward and Shrewsbury.
Ed Potter, Councillor for Leamington.
Rosemary Dartnell, Councillor for Basin Hill, Parliament Sutton.
Gary Parton, Network Coordination and Compliance Manager, Shropshire Council.
Roger Evans, Councillor, Longdon Division.
Rob Wilson, Councillor in Copthorne.
Thank you. Online we have, if you'd like to introduce yourself first, Casey.
Tracy Dark, Assistant Director of Economy and Place. Thank you.
Mark, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Mark Barrow, Exec Director of Place.
And Dan, thank you for attending. Dan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Dan Morris, Cabinet Member for Highways. Chair, I may need to leave at some stage to go and unload some cattle, but I will keep you informed.
Thank you, Dan. And behind us we have the Deputy Leader, Ian Nellins. If at any point you want to come in, Ian, just indicate and you're more than welcome. Thank you. Item 2, does anybody have any disclosable interests? Roger?
It isn't strictly disclosable, Chairman, but I am a member of the Shropshire Rural Housing Association, and there is a report concerning housing associations later on in the agenda. I will be taking part.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? No? In that case, we will move on to item 3, the minutes of tonight's meeting. Does anybody want to pick anything up? I'm looking at you, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 3, under the resolve, there was a small working group reference. Did it take place? I'm not sure. I don't think I was involved in it, but I just want within the next 2 weeks, it states.
Page 3. A small working group meet within the next 2 weeks to look at the council's percentage level of affordable housing contributions, along with comparative data of other local authorities. Did that happen?
No, the small meeting group didn't happen. The work was undertaken to find or get the comparative data, which was circulated to all members before the council meeting. That the report of this committee went to at the beginning of September. But no, that group didn't take place.
Thank you, Chairman. Noted.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody want to pick anything else up on the minutes? No. Okay, in that case, we'll move to item 4, public question time. Pardon? That's a good idea, yeah. Absolutely.
I can't, I was
okay.
wasn't written.
I'll move them. Got a seconder. Thank you. Thank you. I'll the pig head. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gary. So, public questions. Do we have any?
No public questions, Chair.
Okay. Members' questions, item 5. Do we have any?
No Members' questions, Chair.
Okay. On that one, we'll now move to item 6, which is the River Water Quality Task and Finish Group. And before we start, I'd like to thank those members who took part in this and the excellent leadership provided by Kate Halliday on this item. I think it's one of the best groups I've ever worked on. I think everybody was very focused and really interested in it. So my sincere thanks for that. Kate, you're going to present the report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, and my thanks also. It was a great example, I think, of cross-party working. And I'd also like to thank you, Joyce, for your support to me as a new chair in their Task and Finish group. This is a really important issue. You can barely go a day without seeing something in the papers about it. Only 14% of rivers in England are considered to be at good ecological status. And this is really upsetting swimmers, anglers, river users, public well-being. And, you know, our Severn is beautiful and it's got real potential to attract people to it for tourism and also for commercial uses. You know, the new Smithfield Centre, do we really want to have a polluted river running through it? So there's lots of reasons why we should care about this. So the first meeting, we identified just how wide this issue was, overwhelming, to be honest, because there's so many routes of pollution into our rivers, industrial, agricultural pollution, runoff from highways, and we decided because there was just so much, we would just focus in this instance on sewage because we felt it was manageable and we reserved the rights to perhaps go and take a look at some of these other issues at a later stage. We really expanded our knowledge as a group on many of the issues involved. I think it's you have to recognise the challenges here from our over 100-year-old sewage system that really creates a lot of the problems for us. This infrastructure mixes household sewage waste with runoff from roads and land. So basically, when it rains, our river turns into our second sewage system because the existing infrastructure just can't cope with both rainwater and sewage, and the whole lot gets pumped into our rivers. We did come away, we started very enthusiastically, and I think we ended enthusiastically as well, but we did come away with some unanswered questions. Our very first meeting, we wanted to get a map of where the hotspots of pollution were in Shropshire. You know, does Bridgnorth have a specific issue? You know, are there issues in the countryside that don't exist in towns? So we asked the Environment Agency and Severn Trent Water for that information, and we don't feel that we got it really. Basically the issue is we do have it. We do have information about how often the sewage outflows are discharging sewage into our rivers, but we don't really have good data of what's in our rivers, which would be really good to know, wouldn't it? So we had a number of issues around, you know, just trying to work out what problems we need to tackle, and I don't think we really got to find out. Part of the issue is that water companies are asked to self-monitor. So the Environment Agency takes information from the water companies and they're asked to do that between 12 and 24 times a year. So we don't necessarily get a really good pattern of what's happening. We don't know what's happened just after a spillage, for example. So I think we just don't have a clear picture. And so one of our requests in our recommendation is that we want increased testing from the water companies, including before and after sewage releases. We were also very disappointed not to get information we asked specifically for about dry releases. Now, dry releases are when sewage is released into our rivers, even when it's not raining. It's illegal. You're not allowed to do it. But a recent investigation just a couple of months ago found that 3 major water companies have been doing it 100 times in the last year, allegedly. So there's an investigation going into that. So we asked Severn Trent if they had done any dry releases, and they didn't give us the information. So we were really disappointed about that. I think, though, however, in our meetings with Severn Trent Water, they were right to point out that the regulation placed on them probably isn't what the public would like it to be. So they say they are working towards and they're operating within the boundaries that are set for them. And there was some frustration in the group that the water companies and the regulation and the legislation just appear to be aiming for a kind of bare minimum rather than good or, well, we would like excellent, wouldn't we? We'd like excellent water quality in Shropshire and the rest of the country. There was quite a lot of discussion about that. You know, the water companies are making profits and choosing not to spend it on infrastructure, and this has created understandable public anger. So I think the group felt that relying just on the water companies to do their own homework isn't necessarily the full way ahead. And we also noted the Environment Agency have had cuts of about 50% over the last decade in their staffing, and they're unlikely to really be able to bring about the changes that we need. The things I've just mentioned, you know, Shropshire Council have very limited opportunity to change those things. They're national issues. We are going to ask Shropshire Council to lobby around those issues, but we recognise that, you know, it's a bit out of our reach. But we do have some things that we really do think we can work on and change. So one of the things we talked about quite a lot is the way that citizen scientists are filling the gap in the lack of testing of water. So in lots of areas now, citizen scientists are testing the water, sending them off to reputable labs and getting the results of what's in our waters. And certainly, from my perspective, the best information I've seen of what's in our rivers in Shropshire has come from citizen scientists. Now, this information has led to really dramatic improvements in water quality in some areas. So we heard from campaigners from Oxford called the Windrush campaign, and they challenged both the Environment Agency and the water companies' reports successfully, and they were found to have more pollution in the rivers than they were reporting. And this has led to the water company there putting in quite a lot of money into infrastructure. And it does look like that's as a direct result of the citizen scientist data. So for this reason, we are recommending that we support where we can citizen scientists in their role to bring a greater clarity to what's actually in our rivers. We had a really interesting presentation about a local app that's been developed by the Environment Agency and Shropshire Wildlife Trust, where people can actually report testing data, the citizen scientist report testing data. Public can have access to this potentially. There's also some nice features like, you know, reporting birds and species and, you know, getting a picture of the sort of trends, you know, of species declining in some areas. Is it linked to the river quality? However, this information, the group felt could potentially be used to argue for investment from Severn Trent Water, and this is something we talked quite a lot about. And we feel we should be in the driving seat for this. So we should be bringing data and actually saying to Severn Trent Water, there's a real problem in this parish in Shropshire. We know because we've got the data. We need investment in this area to do this. We don't feel that it should just be left to Severn Trent Water to decide what infrastructure goes into Shropshire, largely because of the issues we've just talked about in terms of transparency and data. So I think we need to work with them to develop it. Another thing that we've pushed, and I'm really pleased to say the Task and Finish group actually worked with Shropshire Council during this process to get Shropshire Council to support bathing water status applications in Shropshire. So we've got two of these, one in Shrewsbury and one in Ludlow. Local swimmers have applied for bathing water status. This doesn't mean, if accepted, that the bathing water this water quality will improve, but what it does mean is that the Environment Agency have to test the water once a week. And we heard from people in campaigners in Ilkley that they did this, and as a result of this and the regular testing data, Yorkshire Water have now planned big investment in the infrastructure in Ilkley as a result of the regular testing. So we're really pleased that the Shropshire Council really engaged with bathing water status during, I think it was actually in one of our meetings. So I'm really pleased that we've already had some benefits here. And I think that's something we should continue to do for other areas in Shropshire. It'd be nice to have several bathing water status areas in Shropshire, wouldn't it? I think most towns and parishes would like an area that you could swim in and feel safe. Then the other issue we talked about quite a lot was prevention. We heard about schemes like a yellow fish scheme. Obviously, it's better not to have the pollution in the water in the first place. So obviously, it's better if we can stop it before it happens. We heard about a yellow fish campaign where there's highway gullies that lead directly into the river. If you have a yellowfish stencil on that gully and you do some education, I think a lot happens with kids in schools. You realise that, I think they say something like only rain down the drain. That's it. Don't pour fat or paint or anything else down that drain because it's going straight into the river. And so we're going to, ask Shropshire Council in our report just to consider any ways they could look at prevention, get involved in not putting wet wipes down toilets, etc., these sorts of initiatives. And perhaps we could look at some grants for small scale local projects as well to look at prevention issues. There are other things we could do in terms of, forest surfaces for Shropshire Council, land, etc. And I think I'd just like to mention the good work of the River Severn Partnership, who are already doing quite a lot in terms of trying to slow down the river, and this will help certainly with pollution by planting trees and doing different things with the course of the rivers, etc. So we already have some good examples going on, and we just need to continue those. And we'll finish soon. I've just got a couple more points there. Planning. We felt that we could do quite a lot with planning. We're going to recommend that the planning department really consider grampian conditions where necessary. So this basically means that if the river is polluted and can't cope with the existing levels of sewage and sewerage, that if a new development comes along, you can put in a condition that basically said the development can't be filled until there's adequate infrastructure in the local sewage. And this has happened in Oxford, where actually, I think as a result of some testing by citizen scientists, Thames Water actually went to one of the councils in Oxford and asked if they could have a Grampian condition put on them, because basically, if it wasn't, they were going to break the law, basically. So I think we really need to look at Grampian conditions. We could look at supplementary planning documents to look at better drainage, use of grey water systems. We could also certainly look at rainwater capture. Could this be placed into some of the planning conditions for new developments? And I'd just like to kind of finish this with my final point. I think while we have been critical of Severn Trent Water, we very much want to build a relationship with them. There are certainly issues we can work on together. Severn Trent Water use biochar, the excellent pyrolysis units that Shropshire Council are working on now. There may be some opportunities for some joint work there. There are other ways in which we can work together, and so we're suggesting that we really build on that relationship. And I think we're in a position to be a real place leader in terms of making links between citizen scientists, water companies, prevention, education. And I think if we do this, I think there's a good chance that we will get investment from Severn Trent Water. And you need to look no further than Ludlow with the MP Philip Dunn, who gave some really excellent witness statements to us as part of this process. He has campaigned long and hard on improving river quality, and I think it's no surprise that Ludlow now have a significant investment, I think that's as a result of the work Philip Dunn has done. There's no reason why Shropshire Council can't do similar things and get some of this investment. You know, all our water bills are going up, aren't they?
Yeah.
We need to make sure we're grabbing that investment and putting it into the right place. And finally, because this is ongoing, and things change all the time. We're suggesting that we have a standing group to look at climate and river water quality and flooding issues as an ongoing monitoring of the situation. And thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for your time.
Thank you very much, Kate. I'll just come to Tracy and Mark. Is there anything you want to say before I move on to members' questions, etc.?
Tracy, go first and deal with the planning
Okay.
issues.
Yeah. So in terms of drainage systems and new development, that's already, a lot of that's already in place. So if the development causes additional impact on the existing systems, then there will be conditions put on to ensure that that doesn't happen, and that it has to sort of almost consume its own smoke within the development. So there shouldn't be pollution to our watercourses, and the Environment Agency and Severn Trent are really in place to ensure they're consulted on planning applications anyway. And we obviously have to take our steer from them as well as to whether there should be additional conditions imposed on development. So you know, I think it's absolutely important. It's just making sure that the right mechanisms used really through the planning system. We can't just impose conditions because we think it might be an issue, because there are legal tests that planning conditions have to adhere to. So it's just really making sure that we're using the right methods really to ensure that no additional pollution to our rivers and watercourses.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Just while I cover a few points, I'll put a slide up, Chair, if I may, just for members to look at while I'm talking, which is an example of one of the things Councillor Halliday's just called out there about porous surfaces, that just as an illustration as part of a wider slide deck of things that are happening already. In terms of the specific points, I think that were called out there, I think we all welcome this report. It's focused on an important aspect for all of us. Just to give a reassurance to Councillor Halliday and other members of the committee that we are working with Severn Trent, seeking assurances on all aspects of river quality. And the South Shropshire River Clun kind of focus, particularly around nutrient neutrality, has a lot of profile, but nutrient neutrality is an issue in many of our rivers and many of our tributaries. So lots of kind of work there actually upstream with the Environment Agency and DEFRA, forgive that phrase, because so much of that relates to what runs off land that ends up in those watercourses. We're doing our bit in that area as an illustration. So Andy Wild in Highways and the Highways team are looking to divert some of where our highways drainage goes in that area. And those kind of things are really important in terms of, well, what can we do with our infrastructure to help take away those pressures? So just to reassure you that we're kind of following through with what can we do, as well as kind of really playing to Severn Trent and Environment Agency our concerns. The prevention and promotion point, I think is a good one, and really happy to kind of get behind that kind of programme of raising the profile, raising the focus on initiatives and what people can do to help with this. I think Adrian Cooper, to be fair, is already canvassing Severn Trent and other people around pyrolysis. So that's a point well made, because biochar, I think, could be a really important thing that kind of plays into this agenda somewhere. So just to confirm, Chair, that, you know, really happy to kind of support the recommendations and put our effort and resources about aligning what we can with our services behind implementing the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Does everybody understand biochar? I think probably most of us do. Does anybody want an explanation of that, or are you? No, you're quite happy. Okay. Right, thank you very much. So members are asked to review, comment and adopt the report. So Ed, you're going first.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really good piece of work. Well done, Kate and the team, for doing that. Just 2 points I wanted to make. One, just about the River Severn Partnership. I think it'd be useful to have information on that and what they're doing and where that information goes, because I presume that's public money. But for my residents particularly, about how that is communicated about what's going on, what the outcomes are, what's the measurable dates of their work, how that impacts on Shropshire residents. So I think, you mentioned it, and I think for this long-standing, I think that would be a useful piece of work moving forward. And the second point, sort of related to that, is about cross-border, because the river doesn't start at the Shropshire border; it comes from Mid Wales, and I know Severn Trent cover pretty much the whole length of the River Severn. But I know for a fact that we have pollution arriving in my parish at the border with Wales because of our swimming group in our neighbourhood. Not that I go swimming, but people do, and they tell me that there is a problem coming. The river only flows in one direction, let's face it, and whatever goes in the river upstream will come through us as well. So I wondered, has there any work been done in terms of talking with Powys and Natural Resources Wales and organisations across border, and how that feeds into this piece of work that we're doing? Because what we do is great, and what we try and achieve is great, but unless it happens for the full length of the river, you're sort of fighting a losing battle to some extent.
Yeah, I think Ed, this is the beginning of a lot of work. We are going to look into other issues and set up a group from here that's going to meet every so many months to discuss these issues. But if you want to respond, Kate.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and I think that could be the next step. So at the beginning, our heads were spinning a bit at just how much we could do with this. So we focused on Shropshire, but I think it's a really good point. We could have the best setup along the River Severn in our bit of the River Severn, but as you say, if there's all sorts going in higher up, we're not going to.
Yeah, you look at that, for example, it's Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, Shropshire. So if we want Bridge North to have fantastic water quality, we need to. It's not just Shropshire doing it; it's other local authorities as well.
Very good point. Yeah, so I think that could be something for future.
But I think Tom is making a note there, aren't you, Tom?
I was just going to say that I was contacted by some of my counterparts and Claire's counterparts in Telford and Wrekin. From the sounds of it, they are considering doing a similar piece of work with their members as well. So I will be getting back in touch with them. And I'll make that point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Roger.
Yeah, Mark coming.
Oh, sorry. Give me a second. Mark, is that relevant to what's just been said?
It is, Chair. It is, Chair. If you don't mind, just to give that reassurance, and I'll just share something with you, which I'm free to. There is a lot of work that's been going on in the background with Powys, Natural Resources Wales, and the Environment Agency, and this is kind of hot off the press, so to speak. And members will be getting a briefing in December on this. Is that there's a proposal to engage in a broad community consultation exercise in probably end of January. That green dotted box in the top left there kicks off that formal process, and that's working from Shrewsbury right the way to the source of the water in the Welsh Mountains, across boundaries, and it's the whole kind of water management piece looking forward as a big strategic piece of work that deals with water security, water quality, and kind of flooding. So that will then develop a strategy that will be complete for autumn 2025. So this piece of work today that you're discussing really will fit in nicely with kind of helping setting the scene for that. So just to reassure members that those relationships and those discussions with Powys and the Environment Agency, Natural Resources Wales are advanced and happening. And the other link to make there is that in terms of the new Marches Forward partnership that's formally launched tomorrow, actually we're leading the theme in that partnership on all of the kind of nature-based environment and water type issues, and that kind of plays to our strength in this work. So all of this is starting to fit together quite nicely as part of a jigsaw puzzle, and I think the outcomes of this work, Chair, we can assure you we can carry on into that agenda.
Excellent, Mark. Mark, would it be possible to keep Kate updated on this, because you're going to chair the subcommittee that's going to look at all of this, because you're doing such an excellent job. But what I would ask is, sorry, it's loving. So what I would ask, Mark, if you could keep her updated. It's good that we're all going to get a briefing. I'd be really grateful for that, if that's okay. Yeah, you're happy with that, Kate?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulate the work that's done and the time that was spent in it. It would have been good to have known some of the dates the task and finish group were meeting, because I don't think they were circulated as fully as they could have been. Note the recommendations from it, and also the Grampian conditions. And I think that is top of the list. I note what was said about planning. I think we need to take a forward step and really adopt the Grampian conditions. I see there's hard and soft recommendations, and that is one of the first, and I will hope that we could. I'm not sure where it's going from here, but I hope it's going to the Cabinet for their adoption. I note there's agriculture and associated pollution is something for the future, but I'm disappointed a little bit that it seems to have concentrated on the Severn. There are areas of Shropshire, of course, where it is impossible to build any houses because of the pollution that is there. And there's no reference to that at all about the effect it's having on residents in that area and any affordable homes or anything else that can be built. It's impossible to grant any planning permissions there because of the pollution. So if we're looking at river water quality and everything like that, I would hope that that can be looked at to see what alleviations there can be in that area, because it is getting very desperate there. And we all know about the agricultural runoff, and I use the word pollution. Some farmers may differ to that, but we do need to clean the whole of all our water courses, not only the Severn, but all the water courses that feed into it as well, to enable all those to do it. And I do note the number of fish that are in the Severn at present have been greatly reduced. So congratulations on what's there. There is a lot of work to do. And as I say, I would really want this committee here to say Grampian conditions is the top of our priority, and it should be adopted as a policy.
You're backing a bit there. I was going to say something, but I'll let you in.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. I think it's a point well made, and perhaps some of the other rivers are missing from this report, partly because again it's down to data. We have quite good data on what's coming in the River Severn, less so for other waterways. But I think I absolutely support what you're saying, and I think things like Grampian conditions could be applied across the board. I would just like to say about the Grampian conditions, and I'm glad that you're getting assurances from the Environment Agency and also Severn Trent about the situation. But I think what our task and finish group identified was that in other areas, those assurances haven't necessarily reflected the real picture. And this is where the citizen scientists come in. And so, it might be, I think the report, it would only be where necessary. But if we find that there is, there are specific pollution problems in areas that it's been said they've been fine, they found that in Windrush, and then the actual data coming from the rivers is from the citizen scientists who said something else, then I think that's where Grampian conditions may be considered.
I think, Roger, if you saw the passion of the people who sat on this group, and that I include Rosemary there, if you don't mind, Rosemary, you would know that they're not going to let this go, and they are going to look at everything, including what was mentioned in the report as well about agricultural stuff going in the water, all the different ways that we're getting polluted. And I think education is a really important part of this as well, and educating children, because they are the future, aren't they? So
yeah, I echo that, and I understand that the amount of time that's there, and I welcome it all. What I'm trying to do is add more to it than what is there, so that we can really maybe set our stall out of what we want in Shropshire for the future, and not all of the county.
Yes, thank you, Roger. Anyone say anything else? Oh, next, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be fairly quick because I know we've got other subjects to move on to. I just wanted to follow on a bit from what Councillor Evans has mentioned, and Mark Barron, the agricultural runoff. Just emphasise that I was at a very internal drainage board meeting last week, and I was shown pictures of leaky dams that have been built further upstream, and then destroyed by the water surge last Friday and carried downstream, and then the big branches eventually blocked under bridges and caused
further flooding, and I mentioned Minsley particularly because it was flooded worse than it has been before. So the importance of trying to work with the teams that are building these leaky dams. Not saying they didn't do a good job, maybe it was an exceptional event then, but I just mentioned that, and I think it is just quite important to make sure that these things are built maybe to a better standard, perhaps, I don't know. And I would just mention that the farmers there at that meeting estimated there was well over 1,000 acres of agricultural land flooded in the Ray Valley. And I'm talking about Minsley, Martin and around that area, so well before it gets down to the Ray River, which shows a considerable amount of agricultural runoff that would have actually been caused that day. Thank you.
Yes, Rob.
I was going to say, it's an amazing piece of work. I think what you've done in those back time is pretty good. I think the thing that stands out to me is the transparency of what's going on. This is an issue which 1 year, 2 years ago, most people had suspicions but didn't really know the extent of what was going on, and that's been highlighted by campaigns around the country. I think Shropshire now catching up on that is really important. Definitely can't stop here.
Thank you. I would hope Severn Trent would be a bit more open and honest with information. It's a shame we can't do a freedom of information, which we obviously can't do on them. Particularly around the dry releases, when you ask, how many dry releases have there been, and they don't give you an answer or won't give you an answer, that is suspicious. But on that note, I'd like to move to the recommendations, if I may, please, unless anybody and the officers want to say anything. Are you quite happy to move on?
Yeah, I think Tracy wants to.
Tracy. Oh yeah, sorry, Tracy. I didn't feel that little tension in the corner.
Yeah, no, thank you. Just coming back to the glamping conditions, because we need to just be careful that we don't think that's the solution to everything. Glamping conditions have been around since planning started, so they're not a new thing, but it also has to meet the legal tests. And I just sort of repeat that again. It's really important. So you can't have a sweeping statement that says that we'll just impose that condition on development. You have to demonstrate that development, that new development, will cause harm. You cannot require new development to deal with existing issues, and I think that's the point here. These are existing issues, so we just need to be careful. And I know, and Roger's on planning committee, some members are on planning committee, they will understand that and know that. Just another point I wanted to make, just on the point about water courses and nutrient neutrality and the issues we have. Of course, as Roger says, we have issues around the Clun catchment, and linked to the work Mark referred to, there's a lot of other work going on. We had some government funding to do some work on the Clun catchment area to help to unlock and release development sites. So that work is the report's been done on that, so we have been trying to move some of those applications forward to unlock development in those areas, because we recognise the issues that, as Roger's raised, around development and the need for development in those areas. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Tracy. So if we can please vote on this. Is everybody happy to adopt the report and the recommendations in it, and take on board the other things that we've spoken about to go forward as well? Do I have a proposer? I'll let Roger do it. Ed, seconder. Yeah. Right, those in favour? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Well, now, Kate, thank you very, very much. Really appreciate you doing it here. And I think we have to mention the exceptional work I think that's been done by Tom Dodds, because collecting all that information and put it all together is no mean feat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so item 7. Tracy, it's a response to the report and recommendations of the new housing development work. If you'd like to present that your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report was to came about, and the Task and Finish group came about through members' concerns about new development. It did focus on a number of areas, actually. So what influence does building control have on issues? And I think there's some examples given by this committee of doors not fitting properly internally, a whole sort of raft of issues with new development. And focus a little bit on those developers. It also also covered areas of concern such as open space, that they were, poorly looked after, hadn't been provided well, and perhaps in the right place in development design. The task and finish group also wanted to look at things like Section 38 and 278 agreements. So Section 38 works is highway works, which is within the development. So that's ensuring that the roads within the development, for example, are adopted or to adoptable standard, so that new homeowners are not moving into their property as we find the roads are not adopted, ironworks and cause damage to their cars, and it's all sort of poor quality really in terms of that experience of someone moving into their new home. And 278 works is works that is outside the development, so putting a new roundabout in so that the development can be serviced, for example, and there was concerns about how slow that was to be able to get that work adopted, and those concerns were raised by members. So we had a number of areas to look at. What was really interesting around the task and finish group, so we had a session, a day session, I think it was, virtually, Chair, if from memory, and we had a number of officers that attended that. So we had officers from building control, we had Harpreet from Starr and Cornovi, and we had planning, Tabitha from planning, to really go through some of those issues and really get a better understanding amongst us and members about what we could do and what we could influence. The interesting thing that came out of that was, I think, for members, a better understanding of how building control works. It tends to be a service area that just sort of gets on in the background. Because it is in direct competition as well with the private sector. So residents have a choice. They don't have to use our building control service. They can use an approved inspector. That causes some sort of stresses and concerns at times when things don't go so well, because of course then that homeowner thinks they've used the council for building control, comes to members and complains, and members expect building control to do something about it, and of course we can't. So I think it was a real good awareness raising period as well through that task and finish group, for members to understand how building control works and how it functions. But I think importantly, what came from that was a better awareness, not only for members, but also the wider public on how building control works. And so that they understand that, if they are expecting the council, who will be here all the time, to be able to pick up some of these issues for them, then perhaps they may want to ensure that they're using the local authority building control service. We would also promote that. Why wouldn't we? Because at the end of the day, we are a service competing in a market. And of course, we want to keep people in jobs. And also we expect and hope that people will use the local authority building control service, because, it does it to death. It ensures that buildings are built safely. And our officers know that, if they don't do their job properly, then of course there's consequences to that for the council. And moreover, there are changes in building control around competencies for next year. So building control officers have to go through comprehensive training now, because there are personal liabilities that will come into force in the new year for building control officers. So it's even tighter these days in terms of building control, and that's on the back of the work from Grenfell and that the government's done around making sure that controls are a lot tighter. So there was quite a lot of discussion about building control. We did talk about how we could help members understand it better. And one of the actions was to ensure that certainly in the next, the next election, after the next elections, that members are trained properly and understand how building control works better. We've seen that as a bit of a gap. Also about how building control is communicated to members and the wider public. So quite a bit of work around comms, I think, for building control there, and to raise its profile. One of the other areas that, as I said, we looked at was open space, and members did a site visit, so there was a tour, and they went to have a look at a number of sites and did raise concerns about the quality of some of our open space on developments. And one of the actions, or two of the actions from that, one was to look at an opportunity with Star and Cornovy around setting up a management company that would be within Star and Cornovy, and that would give an opportunity for developers to be able to use that management company to take over the responsibility of those open spaces. We had a lot of discussion about what are called mancos, so management companies, and how poor some of those can be, and of course the impact of that. And some of those examples we saw was the poor quality open space and how poorly it was maintained afterwards. So we looked at how that could be improved better, and we're working with Harpreet to see what opportunities there are there. The other part as well was one of the actions was to look at employing a green space infrastructure officer. This was to look at not only about high quality design on open spaces, but also wider green infrastructure as well. And that would play into some of the local plan work in the future. We have been taking that action forward. Unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful through the recruitment process. So we had no applicants at all. So we are looking at other alternatives around how we can get some support in to be able to deal with that work. So that's a bit of an ongoing thing. One of the other actions was, as I said, to review 38 and 278 work. This was already happening. We had, again, a good discussion about some of the problems and issues that we've had within our Highways DC team. We have brought in people to help to do some of this work and really deal with the huge backlog that we've got on 38 and 278 agreements. We've got a legacy issue of that goes back years and years and years, really, and we have hundreds of them that we're trying to move forward. And we've had unfortunate experiences with bringing staff in, which we had one gentleman that came in to work for us on an agency basis. After 6 months, he had a heart attack and died. So we then brought someone else in. That didn't work out, and we now have some staff in that are starting to make some inroads into this work. So we've got an action to ensure that, by March 24, we're hoping to have really started to get under the skin of some of the issues that we've got with 278 and 38 work. I think that covers all the actions. There were some actions around the New Homes Quality Board and the future homes and building standards that are being introduced. So just the New Homes Quality Board and the Housing Ombudsman, I mean, they exist at the moment. It's a code that developers can sort of sign up to. It's not mandatory, but we felt it would be really good to raise awareness in the industry about that and encourage developers that we work with to perhaps sign up to the New Homes Quality Board. There's quite a lot of stuff on their website about the benefits of that. There's quite a lot of training and development and branding that they can sort of use, but it's almost like a bit of a quality mark that would be really good for us to encourage developers to use. So that's one element that we talked about. And then also future homes and building standards that will be introduced in 2025. So this is ensuring that homes will produce 75 to 80% less carbon emissions than homes that go through the current building regulations. It will be mandatory, so we will start to see some changes and improvements through that being brought in to play. So that's a little bit of a quick summary of what the action plan includes. And we did say to Cabinet that we would, following approval of the action plan by this committee, if this committee is minded to do so, then we would bring back in a year's time as well what the outputs have been from the action plan and what we, which items we've met and which obviously review those that we haven't and the reasons for those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It's really good to hear from you, Tracy, about this, and that brings back what has happened since the recommendations from that task and finished group, which again was a really good quality group as well. Roger, wanted to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I note the report. What I wanted to talk about essentially was the section 38 278. really, I think a lot of councillors in Shropshire have had complaints about this, and to hear that that there are hundreds outstanding, and March 24 will start getting it under, getting attention to it. We should be doing that now. I think the recommendations from the Task and Finish group have been strong. There's been questions at council about the section 38 and residents moving into new estates and having problems with the roads there, and complaining to Shropshire Council. And really it's because it hasn't, whether it is built to the right standard or not, but really March 24 is much too late. I would have thought that we should be doing it now. It should be one of our top priorities to really start to address it. And I see there's no in there about target for adoption. So when a building site or whatever is applicable for section 38, when is the timescale for that road to be adopted? Is it laid down in law? Should we be doing something more about if when there's 80% occupancy, 90% occupancy, should that road, or do we wait to 100% and then start to put the section 38 into operation? It is really one of the real bad features that Shropshire Council is becoming blamed for.
Tracy, isn't it something that already in the process of being done? It's already been attacked. Yes, that's the right word. Yeah.
It has always been, you know, and I think it's an issue that is in every council. You know, some even worse, significantly worse than the situation we have here. This is, you know, a resource issue, and it's not a resource issue in that we don't have the money to be able to pay for staff to bring them in. It's very difficult to get staff that does this work. You know, there are very few highway engineers out there, I'm afraid. So we've had adverts out before and we just struggle to recruit. So we have agency people in at the moment doing this work. You know, we have a particular good officer at the moment that is really starting to make some inroads into this. But I absolutely agree with everything that Councillor Evans says. It is a challenging area. We have been working on it over the last 2 years, and prior to that, I'm sure officers were before I came. But as I've explained, we bring people in. You know, I'm afraid, you know, we had an officer that passed away. He was doing awesome work. It stalled again. So we're doing what we can. And you know, there is a point. There isn't any sort of deadline, Roger, that sort of says your 38 has to be signed by. It absolutely depends on, you know, the development programme of works that the developer submits. We do have at times developers desperately wanting their roads adopted, and it's just making sure that we've got all the legal support in place to be able to do that. So we're doing what we can, but that's why it was important, I think, on this action plan, so that we can come back and report progress we're making. We recognise the problem it is.
Thank you. Rob.
Just to agree with Roger, I think the fact that it seems to be that residents have been let down for maybe 10 years a really sad state of offence. But I want to go back to management companies and the awareness of what effectively it seems like are road management companies that people move into estates and don't really realise what they're going to have to pay as fees, and those fees are completely at the whim of the companies who build the houses, whereas I think most residents assume that the land around them will be adopted by the council and then the council will take care of it. And I think raising awareness of the increase of management companies in new estates is really important, and how that's going to shake out, and if our own companies are going to take that on, that there's a little bit more honour, hopefully, with them rather than some of these other companies that are taking them on. But I think saying that, as Roger said, it comes back to residents assume if the council they can go to and there's a problem with their area, and they find out it's some company with a letterbox elsewhere who never responds. And it's what we do with the ones which already exist. So the places which already exist with these management companies, how can we get a grip of that?
Yeah, and we need to educate the public actually and what we are responsible for and not, which is one of the things we discussed in that Task and Finish group Tracy. I've got two other people waiting to ask questions, Gary and then Rosemary.
Just going to echo what Roger said, but within this annual reporting back, I think the section 38 is so important that we should report at every single meeting until we get to the stage where we've reduced it by a significant amount. Because every single one of us has got a state on it in our divisions that haven't been adopted for years, and we all need to know what's happening and when it's going to happen.
I'll come back to that point in a second. Yes, Rosemary.
Thank you. Being a triple division council, we've got well over 1,500 homes being built, or have been built for some years now. And of course, this is a great deal of all our work is involved in this kind of thing. One of the problems we've got, as well as from the planning aspect of getting roads sorted out, is considerable delays with highways approving standards for Severn Trent Water approving standards for sewage and street lighting for the council and also roads. So that's a large part of it as well. I would say huge delays for no particular reason that I can understand. And I think that Councillor Birch's idea is quite a good one of having a sort of regular check in on that figure would be good for us all.
Yeah. Trace, would it be possible to have feedback every 6 months on how that figure is coming down? Not particularly unless we have a report on where we're at on the action plan, which I think probably we will be doing, won't we?
Yes, Chair. Yeah. I think a 6 monthly reporting back on 278s and 38 or 38s. I think it's 38s really probably the key issue. But perhaps it would also be good to bring our highway engineers, so someone like Gemma Lawley, to come to the meeting and explain the process as well, because I think it's I mean we get frustrated as well with it, but it does take years. It's not something that happens overnight. It is quite an arduous process, and it isn't always the developer's fault. It isn't always our fault actually. It's more around the development programme. So perhaps Gemma could come to the meeting when we report back the first time and just walk members through the process, so they understand the issues that they're dealing with.
And just one Chair.
Sorry, Chair. I was just going to say, just on the Manco point, we don't have control over whether the developer uses a management company or not. So I think the policy of this council many years ago was not to take on open spaces. So we're probably dealing with a little bit of a legacy issue anyway around what the council wanted to do, and that's changed. But we don't have control. So if a developer says sorry, but we're not going to hand over the open spaces and and other sort of facilities, then there is nothing we can do about that as a council. We cannot force them, and we see all that play out as well, exactly as councillor raised about the quality. Some of them disappear, they go bankrupt and leave some of the open spaces like they do, and then it's does the council then pick up that and pick up the cost of that, which is very difficult. And we also see some of the issues where people are being charged huge fees as well when they've moved into their properties. Again, there's not a lot we can do about that as a council, other than just raise awareness through communications.
Sorry, excuse me, Rob.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Tracy, and I think it feels like the next version of leasehold that I think is now getting attention at Westminster. If there's nothing that the council is able to do, is it something the council is able to lobby for changes at Westminster on? Because I think the idea that you move into an estate and suddenly you're slapped with this large bill which you're not expecting for cutting the grass outside or maintaining a play park, it just feels wrong.
Which is the point around the terminology of leasehold. That's the issue.
So is there an additional measure? I don't know if the council can lobby our MPs or something on those. I know there is a bill.
We take it back to quickly.
Yeah,
and they can take it to full council if they feel it's worthy of it. Just one quick thing. Could Gemma actually, if she's going to come and speak to us before that comes to us, can we just have an online briefing? I'm not very keen on taking officers away from their jobs when they don't really have to be at the meeting. Unless
Yes.
it's you two, Paul.
Thank you. Yes,
All right.
sure.
Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is, for me, also one of those cases where let's not underestimate the power of consumer behaviour. And maybe one of the things that we could do here is on the back of the scrutiny committee is sharing in the media concerns that people absolutely can control this with the right legal advice, because when they buy property, if the solicitors are asking the right searching questions in relation to what happens in various instances, that will be a key thing, won't it, that drives behaviour of developers. So, you know, there's something there about let's help educate the public that the better the legal advice they get and the more questions are asked at that stage, that will shape behaviour. I think that just could be an opportunity we can do quite practically, Chair.
I've been thinking that all the way through, actually, because they're obviously not getting the advice they want and or need. But again, that's down to education, isn't it? I've got Nick and Rosemary who've indicated if you've got something that you think is really crucial, then please do. Nick.
I'll be very quick, Chair. We've talked all through this debate about new properties and new developments and everything. Let's forget in Shropshire we've got many older properties which are done up, and I believe I'm right in saying that if you're doing a property up and you want to rent it out, you must have an EPC rating of at least E or above. So let's just bear in mind that building control also has quite a bit of control over. We're going to try and meet the government's climate change targets, then we must bear in mind the older properties that are developed as well.
But that's not what we're dealing with now. It's new developments.
Okay. Fair point.
Rosemary.
Just to add a tiny part to what Mark just suggested about legal advice and searches and so on and so forth. A lot of people that buy properties for the first time, new homes from large developers, are given a package, and they're often a cheap package with all sorts of with the conveyancing included, which is an in-house situation. So they perhaps might not get the independent advice that one would hope they would.
Perhaps we should have something online as a council advising people, new buyers, of the pitfalls.
Ratings.
Yes, yes. I think that's something we can do as a council. It wouldn't cost anything. You'd have a page if you're buying a new property, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing, which you said, Tracy, which I think is really important, is actually if you use our building control, then it's an insurance. It's insurance that in case anything does go wrong, and a reassurance as well. So anyway, I'm going to cut it short now. I think we've spent enough time on this. So is everybody happy with the action plan? Yeah, anybody not? No, unanimous in that case, but thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
I'm really pleased the next one's coming up, finally, Jane. It's the response to the report and recommendations of the social housing and housing strategy work. And I should say this is the first bit of work that has come all the way through the system and the sausage machine of the new way of scrutiny working. And it's here now. So I look forward to hearing what you're going to say.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair, and thanks for having me here. So hopefully committee members will have had a chance to have a look through the report, which, as the Chair says, reflects on the work that's been done through this committee and its predecessor committees as well, looking at some of the issues that impact on housing in Shropshire, particularly affordable housing. And the intention is that the work of the committee is going to shape and inform Shropshire's housing strategy going forwards, including the strategic housing function within the council. So that's absolutely what this is supposed to be doing now and delivering. Members previously made 6 recommendations from this committee, which were taken to Cabinet and agreed there. Those were about the implementation of the revised allocations policy and scheme and making sure that this was actually adhered to by the registered providers, the housing associations who let properties, that the council focuses on the importance or recognises the importance of the strategic housing function, linking together planning policy, social care, economic development, all the things that housing touches manufacturers, basically. Sort of almost wider than that. It's a very, very broad-reaching service in that respect. That we have a place-based approach to housing as well, and economic development, and so we're commissioning housing that's appropriate to the geographies within Shropshire based on need. That investment in social housing picks up specifically the needs of rural settlements and residents as well. And that we explore opportunities to pursue and attract funding, including any sort of new or innovative ways of doing that. And lastly, that we review any and apply any new legislation around short-term lets, which was picking up on some of the conversations about things like Airbnb. So those were the 6 areas that committee focused in, having reviewed very broadly quite an extensive look at what the council can and can't do really around housing, and I hope that was helpful for members. It was certainly very helpful from an officer perspective. So having gone through all of that with members, we can now come through to talk through an action plan with you, picking up on things that we've already done on the back of some of those conversations, but also some of the things that we would like to pursue further. I suppose it's worth reflecting on the fact that this isn't intended to be an absolutely exhaustive action plan either. I anticipate that there will be further things that we can add on over time as it becomes clear, as we gather more information, for example, about housing need, or as regulations change and we look to apply them and that kind of thing. But hopefully it will indicate a good start to respond to the points that were flagged. So is it worthwhile, Chair, if I go through the action plan and just talk through where we're at?
You can say yes. Good luck.
So picking up on the allocations policy and scheme, that is now in place, underway. And I would say as well that we are immediately through the actions of our colleagues in the housing options team, who are actively working with the housing associations around this. We are starting to see some real change, because they are directly challenging the housing associations, registered providers, in terms of how they allocate stock. So, for example, there had been some tendency for them to perhaps be picking and choosing who they might house out of those who bid for properties, for sometimes for really good reasons, but sometimes for perhaps making assumptions that were not accurate. And so challenge is now happening on a more regular basis. We are already seeing a lot more people who have higher needs on our housing register being selected and chosen and put into those properties. And that is already having a beneficial impact in terms of the numbers of people in temporary accommodation, moving people through and out of temporary accommodation and into sort of more permanent settings, which is exactly what we want to see happening. So that action that's happened to date is already showing some beneficial outcomes. Moving forwards on that point, we do want to see some earlier exchanges between colleagues in the planning team and in the housing lettings housing services side, so that we can maybe do some early lets, pre-lets as they're called, pre-allocations rather, to properties, again trying to make sure that we're kind of getting to those people in the highest need, and then matches made sooner. And so our allocations policy, which is as approved by council, by cabinet, is implemented appropriately. And there is an upgrade of our IT system to make sure that things all run more smoothly as well. In terms of the strategic housing function, we are beefing this up. We do now have a new housing strategy officer in post, which we're absolutely delighted about. And there is more work in between colleagues in different parts of the council through the Housing Executive Board meeting, which is an internal officer meeting, which is helping to pull together the different functions and hopefully make that a stronger function as a consequence. And there is more work going on in this regard as well. You'll be aware Mel Holland, who has done a lot of work with this committee previously, is no longer with us, unfortunately, but we are going to be recruiting back into that role again, and hopefully make sure that that's a strong link. In terms of the place-based approach to housing, a housing commissioning priorities document has been shared with all of the registered providers and with Cornovi and Star, which focuses on different geographies and talks about the housing needs for new build in those geographies. And that is something that's been based on the housing needs survey that was undertaken in 2022. So I think that's I think already showing our focus geographically on specific needs and specific groups as well that we need to support. Lots of further action to follow on in respect of this. There's proposals, for example, around a housing strategy for Shrewsbury linking to the big town plan. I won't pick out everything in here because I'm sure colleagues on the committee will have looked through already. In terms of investment in social housing, specific needs of rural settlements, there have been some activities around that in the Housing Commission priorities document, but also the Sustainable Affordable Warmth Strategy, which particularly picks up upon the needs of rural homes. And there's a lot of activity coming through that as well in terms of actual investment into properties and a lot of funds coming into Shropshire as a result of the bids that we've been making through that through the Affordable Warmth Energy Efficiency team. We are bringing through an independent living and specialist housing strategy for Shropshire, which is at the moment a draft has literally landed in my inbox in the last quarter of an hour. So it's going to be hot off the press. It's going to be going out for consultation, and that will pick up on a lot of quite specific needs as well, including in rural settlements. In terms of opportunities for additional funding, we do link a lot with Homes England, which is the government quango that puts out funding, as well as the West Midlands Combined Authority. And there's lots of conversations happening around the Marches Forward partnership at the moment as well, about how we can act more as a broader lobbying group together, because the 4 local authorities in that group have very similar issues in respect of rural communities, ageing communities, etc., which I think those familiar issues will hopefully help us to lobby together for additional funding for our priorities. I think I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you. I was going to say thank you for being concise. There is a lot to fill in. Any questions? Ed?
Just keep it. So I just wondered. I'm not really overly familiar with this. I wasn't on the committee prior to all the work, but around private landlords and the role that they play. I spoke to a private landlord this morning who said they'd had 40 applications for a 1-bedroom flat in Shrewsbury within the first day, I think, before they closed it down and filtered. So there's obviously a significant demand there. What part do they play within our housing need in terms of quality, also around estates in rural areas and the lack of now private rentals in terms of Airbnbs? I'm sure that's sort of been picked up. Just wanted to flag that.
It's a really good point. And actually, it's been about a fortnight, 3 weeks ago, we had the first meeting of the National Residential Landlords Association for Shropshire since pre-pandemic, and it was very interesting. And I attended because it's an area that I think we do need to focus on in Shropshire as well. There has been a real reduction across the board in private rented landlords. A lot of them withdrawing from the market because of the sense of increased expectations from them, our own standards, and also the sense that their business might be threatened by changes in regulation that they're nervous about. And they are a key part of the market. They provide for those who are not able to get mortgages necessarily, and just for those who wish to be mobile and not sort of stick in one place and commit to a mortgage and property ownership. So you're right. You're absolutely right to call it out as an issue. It's not something we've got a simple answer to, because this is a national problem that we're seeing, but it is something that we wish to link to the NRLA around, to see if we can try and support our local private sector landlords and encourage those who are doing a good job. We do have links to them through our enforcement team. That tends to be the ones who are not doing such a good job. So it's a fair point.
Yeah. There is a huge issue. I know in Oswestry, in the estate agents, we've got an annex on our house, which we're not doing anything with. It's empty at the moment, and it is only for family members. But an estate agent said to us, if you did want to put that out to rent, you'd get 40 people after it straight away. There is a huge gap, and I don't know how you fill that gap. But anyway, can I just ask, who is the new strategic housing officer you spoke of? Have they got a name?
Yes, it's a lady called Tammy Sabanovich.
Oh, I can't stand that. Yeah, perhaps you could all get an email just telling her about the new position, because I think that's something that we lack when we have new positions on the council. We're not made aware of it, so we don't know who's doing what. Roger.
Thanks. Congratulations on it, but there's no time scale on it. with a task and finish, it's usually there in the actions and the timescale when they're going to be completed. There's lots there about future actions, but there's no indication when it can be done. Can that be provided, please? I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, councillor. And in fact, when I looked at the action plan for the previous one, I suddenly realised what was missing from one. So apologies. Yes, that can be added.
Perhaps you can add that and just be sent round to members of the committee so that we know that's the right thing to tell. Is that it? Yeah. Oh, Rob.
I just wanted to ask about locating housing near transport links. I think we had this committee's predecessor had the chairman of commerce come and say people were finding it really hard to recruit apprentices and the like because they couldn't get to places of work from where they lived. And I hope you're meeting up with colleagues in transport and highways to try and make sure that when we are looking for opportunities for social housing, they are well connected to transport and they're not off in a corner somewhere where it makes it very difficult to access work.
Yeah, quite right.
Just to confirm, that's absolutely something that forms part of the thinking around particularly social housing, where you wouldn't necessarily expect everybody to own a vehicle. And in fact, that's something that planning colleagues very much anticipate too. So it tends to form part of the planning application. You provide a design and access statement that would pick up on that kind of point too. So you're quite right.
That's really
okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And just Dan, this doesn't come under your portfolio, does it? Never quite.
Sorry, say again, Chair.
It doesn't come under your portfolio, does it? I'm very confused. What comes under you? It's Dean. Okay. Okay, you can switch off again now, Dan. Dan, very appreciate you having on. Thank you. You were. Thank you very much for being online. It was the other one that was yours, wasn't it? Previous one. No.
No, I've got one coming up, haven't I? The next one on the agenda, isn't it, on bunting and temporary signs?
Oh yeah, got a lot to say on that one, Dan. So hang on. Thank you. Okay, so are we all happy with the action plan? Sure. Yes, Gary.
Just gone on what I'd said about the private landlords.
Yes.
The issue with all private landlords pulling out the market is they're flooding the social housing market with lots of people who are being evicted, etc. Yes. Isn't there something we could possibly do whereby an organisation purchases the private landlord's house with the tenant in situ and develops a social housing stock that way?
We didn't just say that. I agree.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the council? Sorry.
Is it
sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Ed.
Am I able to just chip in just to build on that?
No,
is it possible for the council to be a private landlord to meet the need, which would relieve the pressure on the housing association and affordable market? Because there's a big area of people that perhaps don't necessarily need to be going down the housing association route, affordable rental route, but can afford cheaper privately rented properties that aren't in existence. Those that were often made up by private estates around Shropshire that don't exist anymore, smaller properties within urban settings. Is that something that the local authority is able to do as an income stream, as well as meeting the unmet need?
No, in short, in the local authority is not able to do that. However,
that's rained on that.
Cornovia Developments Limited is.
There we are.
So, and Cornovia is actually at the moment looking at developing, in fact, on its London Road site is intended to be one of the first ones where it does this, developing private rented as part of its offer. And one of the things we're doing at the moment with Cornovia is looking at the loan agreement with them to sort of vary it so that that permits that to happen. So there is potential, but this is their first kind of foot in the water, toe in the water around the private rented sector. It's another thing entirely to then be buying somebody else's portfolio of stock, because you need to be sure about the quality of it, the location of it, all sorts of other things. But that said, it's certainly something to contemplate for the future as an option. But I'm not sure as Cornovia, given that their funding is entirely at the moment loan funding from the local authority, whether the local authority is in a position to fund them to the extent to cover these gaps in the market. But it's certainly something that we are actually looking at the moment through Cornovia.
Just on the timescale, I appreciate that everything that local authorities tend to take a long time. Building property to rent is a long process. You know, to be able to purchase something, even if it was to purchase off a reputable developer, you know, that could get the ball rolling, you know, you provide an income stream straight away. But you know, it's a capital investment, I assume, that Cornovia would make as a loan through Shropshire Council.
Okay, thank you. So is everybody happy with the action plan and your feedback, the information that's been asked for? Yeah. Are you happy with that? Anybody?
Just to reiterate what Roger said, that if you have some data, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's possible. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Right, so we will now move on to finally, Gary. Banners, bunting, Christmas lights and temporary signage. This has been on the cards pre-COVID. It's come back in various forms and guises.
I should have noted at the beginning that I'm also a Shrewsbury Town Council, and I will look at this as it is. If that's okay.
I don't actually think that.
I just couldn't see specifically mention Shrewsbury, but I thought I should mention it anyway.
No, that's fine. I don't think it is a conflict. In fact, I value what you think on this. So thank you very much. So Gary, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'll start with there's two items here: banners, bunting, Christmas lighting, and also temporary signage, mostly related to temporary signage for development. So we can start with banners and bunting. In summary, recommendations from previous committee meetings were that Shropshire Council retain the powers for licensing banners, bunting and illuminations, but also look to consult further with all town and parish councils on, where appropriate, provision for specific retail centres, individual towns and parishes. Also, that local input is gained on defining acceptable design and content based on local area aesthetics and community sentiment. There was also the recommendation that separate policies were created both for banners over and alongside the highway. Also, that an appropriate fee be considered to reflect any administration costs involved. Members have raised particular concern around banners being unsuitably erected on railings, fences and walls bordering the highway, and being able to control the proliferation of banners. As noted in the report, most applications to erect banners are for the approved fixing locations in Shrewsbury, which are maintained by Shrewsbury Town Council. Further liaison has been ongoing with STC, revolving around a dual process, which would see STC manage applications and diary bookings via their own agreed process, whilst permission to erect under licence is retained by Shropshire Council. With this in mind, there have been discussions about issuing an annual licence or similar for approved fixing locations. So for the purposes of progressing the recommendations, I'd like to seek agreement to further engage with town and parish councils and gain some local feedback on acceptable design and content for their area, views on banners being permitted alongside the highway, which would include feedback on locations where that particular town and parish would deem acceptable for that to happen. Views on a proposal for local council to be more involved in the administrative and enforcement process as per the STC model. If there's a willingness and ability to follow the STC model, views on proposals for an annual licence to be issued to the administrative council. And the proposal from officers is to carry out further engagement prior to Christmas with a view for any subsequent revised policy and process to be implemented by April 2024.
Thank you very much, Gary. I'll just mention I was on the initial group that looked at this. The clerk to Shrewsbury Town Council was actually on this and really helpful. And I think at the time she welcomed this, and I'm hoping she still does. And I think Alan Mosley, that it was a really, Roger, I think you were on this one, weren't you? No, you weren't, the one you weren't on. But there was general consensus on this one, and the only thing I can see in the report is to do with the signage, isn't it? Got signage on this one.
You can see whether this is two separate things, the banners and the.
Okay, well, we'll deal with this first. Okay. And then do you want to say anything?
Madam Chairman, why reinvent the wheel? Shrewsbury Town Council has been doing this for years. They do a great job at it.
I know, that's exactly.
I'm slowly but surely taking things off them just because we can.
No, I don't think that's it at all.
Leave it with them. We retain the licence every year, but let Shrewsbury Town Council.
No, we use Shrewsbury Town Council as an example of, well.
Your year the process that came over to us, as a licensing authority. But the process by de facto has always been with Shrewsbury Council. They've organised the diary bookings. They organise the testing of the fixing point. They know where they are. They've got historic involvement. So the historic involvement still continues. Yeah. Whereas the licensing element.
No problem with Shrewsbury Town Council, thank you, Gary. Yeah, but other town councils and villages, etc., there may be an issue, safety issues as much as anything.
Yeah, we don't really know, for example, what Bridgnorth have put in place, what Lebanon have put in place, what Shirehall have put in place, and what they want in place.
And Oswestry Town Council, of course, because they put like stuff like that. Don't forget Oswestry. Do you want to come in now, Dan, or after?
I'll come in after, please, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay then. So I'll go. Roger.
I'm not clear, Chairman. Maybe it's me, but towns have got a lot more ability to do things in their areas than parishes. Many years ago, parishes were delegated to have responsibility on putting banners up at the roadside and things like that, because they know where it's safe to do so, where it's possible to do so, the preferences and what the local population would accept and wouldn't accept. If a licence is needed for a parish council, for example, to do it, is there any cost? Because if it's coming out in December for April 24, parishes are setting their precept, as are towns, during December and January. So if there is any cost, it needs to be there. But please don't make it too bureaucratic. Parish councils especially are small. And if it's a small banner or a small public which is going to be up, and I see there's temporary ones as well, and I'm not sure where the changeover is, but yeah, parishes know, and I'm sure parishes would deal with it responsibly in safe places without a lot of legislation to back it up.
Actually, Roger, the officers want to carry out a further engagement consultation, which up to Christmas, so it is actually happening. And I would also say most town and parish councils do have reserves if there was a blip of any sort. I find out what my parish council has last week, and I was very surprised what they've got in reserves, but that's another issue. So Rob and then Paul.
I was just going to say, I think it echoes Rodri that applying a one-size-fits-all based on Shrewsbury Town Council may not be appropriate.
No.
I think Shrewsbury Town Council has different resources to others, and staff and everything else. So just be mindful of that. I think that's a pretty important thing going forwards.
Actually. Nice. Cool.
Thanks, Chair. Roger just reminded me that someone in Whitchurch, Blackberry Fair, it's a big weekend, Blackberry Fair it's called, it's in the autumn, and they put signs up around town. They have done for years now. And 10 days before it actually commenced, they were taken away. And this upset Whitchurch very much. I mean, it's a big thing, these things Whitchurch of the year, really. And they're all taken down. And we've got to look into it, and they've got to do the job properly. But any advice coming forward would be great. So as we're saying, Shrewsbury is the exception because their precepts are higher. But
I think that when you say banners, you mean on fences, don't you?
No, they were up against the hedge, well off the highway, but it was on round about the side of,
I'm aware of conversations with this, and they are distracting. And actually, if you take Oswestry, the banners have been taken down there by the Cambrian Railway. Actually, when you drive into the town, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and it doesn't look very tidy, and they're all year round.
I mean, you do.
Ones they've been taken down. They have been taken down, and honestly, it is such an improvement. That what we need to find is places where people can legally, not on the roadside, but other places. The roadside that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think part of it as well is knowing from us as a licensing authority who owns that particular boundary fence or wall, or because we are given permission for that to be done, and maybe not with the owner's consent, and sometimes the ownership is quite vague and quite grey, and so I think you engage with parish and town councils to get feedback on that. Where would you want it to be put? Where would you, by proxy, where not?
It's basically so.
There's a process there.
And actually, if they speak to council officers, they might be able to direct them where it isn't a
That's what I'm
problem.
trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that somebody was pointed out to me that you can't do anything about it at the moment, but it would have to go to planning. Is people have started putting banners, biggish banners, on the side of buildings. And of course, you can't put big signage, proper signage up on a building over a certain size without permission of the council. But these banners can go up and they're not the tidiest. And I think maybe Dan can comment on that. I wondered whether that could be looked at because I know it's an issue for a number of people. Anybody else want to speak on this before I go to Dan? No, Dan?
I mean, Gary's outlined the report quite well. All we're asking for is a little bit more consultation with the Christmas period that comes up, and then to make some further recommendations. So there isn't much more I can add to it, really, Joyce.
No, and it's going to be consulted on anyway, so everyone will be able to give the feedback. I'm just quite anxious. This has been sitting around for a number of years now. We just need to get something sorted and it to go through that everybody's happy with. In the Blackberry Fair.
Well, I mean, the report itself says with a view to getting something in place by April 24. So I think we've got a timescale on that now.
We have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Gary, want to?
Temporary directional signage.
Yes, we do that.
Okay. This is regarding, as it says, temporary directional signage, which again, we license that activity. So the signs that you see, the yellow signs with the black writing with the housing symbol saying new development, those are put up under license. So recommendations in summary from previous committee meetings were that there was a revision of the existing charges for licensing temporary directional signing to better reflect the work required to administer and monitor stroke enforce the scheme. There was also the recommendation that any revised policy and process limits the duration of any given license in a 12-month period before requiring renewal. Members raised a concern regarding being able to control both a potential proliferation of these signs and also the ability to ably enforce any licence conditions imposed. As noted in the report, a revision of the current policy and process and licence fee is taken place, and the following is proposed. That these propose that the licence fee is amended to £250 per application for a 12-month period, with £110 payable for any further required extension. This revised charge now allows for recovery of officer time in carrying out 3 scheduled compliance monitoring inspections and enforce compliance to set conditions. Furthermore, a revised policy and criteria intends to simplify and clarify the current guidelines on where these signs can be erected, how many can be erected, and how long for. This will also allow officers a more effective way of monitoring and enforcement. So to progress the recommendations further, I'd like to seek agreement on amending the current administration fee of £102 to £250 per application. And then the extension fee from £97 to £110. Amending the current conditions applied to allow a 12-month initial licence and a further maximum 6-month licence if required. Removing the current condition of signs only being situated, and I quote, no more than half a mile or 2 junctions away from development, but retaining the condition of no more than 3 directional signs per development to aid developers and simplify enforcement. Officer's proposal is that a revised process and fee is implemented as soon as possible and by April 2024 at the latest. So I'd welcome the committee members' comments and recommendations on that.
Very much. I think we've all seen housing development signs go up and they step there for years. They're not taken down. So this really is a tidying up exercise. And I believe the cost that the licenses just covers the cost of
The change in the cost, it just reflects we have street works inspectors, and then that covers the cost of three inspections. So on the initial giving out the license, should be gone up properly. And then again when they should be coming down, and again a few weeks after that, check they have come down basically. So it's that kind of monitoring effect to say, well, actually, have they done what they're supposed to do? They don't put 20 up, or you know, they'll put them in various locations, and also they've taken them down.
Any comments? Gary?
Just with the proliferation signs on shown. What about historic signs that are without license? Are we going to?
Yeah, I think part of the process would be for me anyway, is to make sure that you get that revised fee, and obviously that'll be at the moment the inspectors haven't got an inspection regime, but they will have. You know, the first thing from that would be the historic signs that are already up, checking when they went up, and then making sure that we identify those which need to come down.
Then we get a further point. And what about if you've got 4 or 5 signs on a lamppost, which is confusing for people? Can we mandate it that each developer gets 1 lamppost so they're spread out?
Yeah,
make it clearer for people driving around.
To a certain degree, yes. I know what you're saying. Yeah, part of the process, yeah, to make sure that there's not proliferation, basically. Yeah. So I think if we see that we've got an application to put one on a particular lamppost, and it's already got 3 on it, yeah, we'd say no, basically. Yeah.
Anything else? No. Dan, anything you want to say?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to note that the fee increase still puts us on the sort of the very low band of where we are in a competitive set. So you'll note from report 1.12 that it's up to £1,585. So an increase of 100 to 250 in the grand scheme of things still isn't excessive, I don't think, given where the rest of the market is, so to speak.
I remember saying that. Yeah, we're quite low down on what we're charging.
Which vary across the
so the question is, are we charging too little? There you go. There's a question.
On that, Madam Chairman, should we also put some sort of index link in, or some sort of annual automatic increase?
I don't know what.
There is an increase basically every year anyway with fees and charges, but I think
Yeah, just briefly, I wouldn't mind betting that this will probably disappear, because the directional signage is to get construction vehicles and whatever people from to a point. Yeah. Well, technology nowadays, you've got what-free words, you've got pin drops, you've got whatever it might be. Yeah. I think this is something in the future, and again, I'm not saying it's a concern, I'm saying put the price up, it's got to cover costs and everything. But the one thing I would flag is if it becomes more costly, developers are going to turn around and say, do you know what? Here's the pin drop. This is where you're going. This is where you need to get to. Right. All vehicles have it. So I think it'll be a problem that might resolve itself.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, is everybody happy with the recommendations in the report? Is anybody not? Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much. Yep. We're all on board with everything today, aren't we? So now we will, thank you, Gary, by the way, thank you for done on it. We'll go to the word programme. Tom from the bye. We've got Roger for another 20 minutes. Somebody's going to use 20 minutes. Oh, Rob, you've got to protect it. Dave. Okay. All right, Rob.
Thank you. So the work programme is probably reflecting everything that everyone has contributed to in the summer. We've got the development contribution task and contribute that will be going live shortly. There are 10 and 11 members who've come forward across the council to be involved in that, and it's cross-party. So although it's on the large side for a task and finish group, we're probably going to be proceeding with all 11 of the members who've come forward, 10 to 11 members who've come forward on that, because it is clearly a picture of interest. And when you discussed it in the summer, that one was one that there was quite a lot of comment and interest on, particularly making sure that the social aspects of new developments were being properly identified and reflected in the contributions which are going to be made. So that is about to go live now. Is the next piece of work for this committee. You've just confirmed earlier today that about making the take forward the recommendation from the River Water Quality Task Force Group on that standing task force group in this committee on climate change and the environment. So I guess what I'm flagging is there are numbers of pieces of work now which are coming to life for this committee, which you want to take into account when you're looking at your work programme, topics you're looking at going forward. The idea with these work programme topics is that they will feed either task and finish group work or other work which might take place outside of the formal committee. So you have an option of looking at topics using a whole committee approach where you takes place outside of here and you can work through those topics in more detail. I think really it's you that set your work programme, you who confirm whether or not the topics on here are the ones you want to look at, and you can raise suggestions for other topics which might want to come in, and then we will need to look at how those move into the work programme and what drops out and when you want to look at them as well. So I think really it's just opening the floor now with the context that there are two pieces of work which will be continuing from this committee.
Sorry, Chair, I'm going backwards now. I mentioned before, going back to the banners, Gary, about banners on the side of, and talk to you as well, Mark, on the side of building, but we didn't say that we get planning to look at that and see if we can do something about it. But I'm not quite sure who to register that with. Mark.
Chair, anticipating that, I've already done it with Andy Wigley. And I've asked Andy, because Andy's got planning policy as part of his function, I've asked Andy to look at what measures are available and then we can kind of bring that to you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. I'm sorry, Tom. I apologise.
Okay. So I guess really it's opening up the discussion to the committee in terms of the work programme. Are you happy with what's in there? When do we want to look at moving it forward? And also thinking about maybe longer than just the next few months into the next year.
Rob.
I think council has two very large infrastructure projects coming up: North West Relief Road and Smithfield project. I think it'd be right for this committee to scrutinise both of those at the appropriate time. Now, I understand the full business case is being developed now, I guess, for the Relief Road, and it's where that would fit for this committee in time. And the Riverside project is currently out for a public consultation. I think it'd be right for this committee to also scrutinise that to see where that's going, to understand it more. Given they are probably the two biggest projects the council's undertaking right now, it would be right for this committee to scrutinise both.
And what would we looking at exactly, and what are we looking to see by looking at it?
If I take a moment to think, others might have an instant thought. I don't know.
Are we going to gain anything? That's the point. Might be in the right direction. We don't just look at things for the sake of looking at.
No, the conditions on the North West really feel the conditions coming back to the committee anyway. So it's been sort of scrutinised in a way.
No, it's not. Yeah, but the conditions are to do with planning and they're not to do with this committee. So, any thoughts, Rob?
I think there's something, and Mark will have thoughts on this. It's the interconnectivity of projects and how they're going on. I think we talked particularly about transport in here, about how Elsie Whip plus and Eve's the back of the room, Elsie Whip movement plan that's coming out in January, North West Relief Road, Smithfield development, everything, LTP4, which will come online at some point, but it's how they are all being drawn together. I'm new to Scrutiny Committee, so it's not saying how it works, but I think there is something about how they are linking to look at. But Mark or Dan may have thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair. I just wonder, as we move into this phase of the North West Relief Road, officers' time is going to be very, very busy as we move into the business case side of things. I just wonder whether or not that is the best use of officers' time in something that has basically been scrutinised to death for the past 3 years. The council has come to a democratic decision to build the road, subject to the conditions which was agreed in the planning meeting last Tuesday. The council has a finite amount of resources, and I just wonder what this would achieve as far as the council is concerned. That's all.
I think that as chair of this committee, that's my concern, because if you don't want to just look at it for the sake of looking at it.
I think getting into the detail of that business case when it is produced, I think, is important. And whether the council is able to do that, it would come to council. But it's a huge project, and there's going to be a huge report. And I think understand that for the council's behalf, to be able to say to council, we have looked at this.
I think that probably, if it was for a committee, would be for the transformation one anyway, wouldn't it? That particular, or am I wrong? Mark wants to come in. I'll bring Mark in first.
It's just also to be clear, Chair, that the final business case will come to full council for agreement. So there's an opportunity around that project at that point as well. What we don't know yet, and we are in discussion with the DFT, is, as members will know, the DFT have undertaken to fully fund that, is what role they might have in that process. So there's a little bit about understanding that too, because we know they're keen to kind of see delivery in that sense. So there could be some element of shared delivery in there. We don't know yet. We're having discussions with officers on that. The other bit in relation to Riverside and developments is that, of course, there is a range of kind of monitoring that's taking place, and each development, in theory, in accordance with the master plan, will come again forward to council kind of for funding as we bring them forward. So I think there'll be stages around each of those that there'll be opportunities for members to scrutinise. The other bit, though, Chair, which ties a lot of this stuff together is, and I know we've had Victoria Merrill here before, but actually the finalisation of LTP4 will be coming forward next year as well. So that whole kind of local transport policy framework for Shropshire that picks up cycling and walking and all forms of transport infrastructure is another big bit that connects all of this together as well. So there's all sorts of angles here, and as members know, and you're aware of, there's developments within James Willocks's world of public transport, and he's moving forward with his demand responsive bit. So actually, all of this stuff in one way or another hangs together in some ways, Chair. So maybe there's something there about how we frame what it is that members want to get to, which is, how does transport work? How do people move? How are we going to manage future growth and development? How does infrastructure support that? That's maybe the theme that sort of jumps out to me, rather than almost specifics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was Oswestry Road, well, as such. Just going to bring Dan in, because we've been waiting patiently. Now it's you, Roger.
The Oswestry Road to pick up as well.
That's fine.
It's a question for Mark, really. I just wondered, when the full business case comes and it goes before full council, what is Mark's view on the the scrutiny process within full council? Normally a full council meeting will take a long time. Is there going to be, do you envisage a special meeting just for the North West Reef Road, given the size of the project? And if that is the case, should that not be a good place for a lot of scrutiny, effectively, of the decision and the case itself?
Can I, Chair, come in on that? It may be that's the case, that it's significant enough. I think there's a bit about socialising the whole project for members, full stop, isn't there, in terms of whether there's briefings, processes, whether it's a specific full council. But I think the other thing that's important is that people have got sufficient time to review that. So there's a bit there about making sure that all of those items are kind of fully developed and you've got time to consider it properly, because it will be huge. It's a huge project. And this is my bit about the relationship with the DfT. What we're working on currently is wanting to now understand what they want from us. Conventionally, it's what's called a Treasury Green Book case, and you've got kind of 5 areas that you have to respond to. What we're saying to DfT now, Chair, is that what you want, or do you want something different, given that you're now fully funding it? So there's a little bit of that that's still a bit at large at the moment. But the opportunity, I think, that Councillor Morris has just raised is, yes, there will be opportunities for members to look at this, I think, on the way in.
Thank you. I would suggest, I'll let you speak first, Roger.
I think that we're trying to jump edges, go through hoops that are not yet in place. The applicant, Shropshire Council, have not yet got planning permission for the North West Relief Road. It still has to go back to the planning committee for them, and there's some people around the table who sit on the planning committee for planning reasons for them to look at it before it can go ahead. As I understand it, some of those planning reasons will be subject to a discussion with the Environment Agency and any conditions that they may want to have fulfilled by Shropshire, by the applicant, which could affect the business case. So the business case, and for that to be scrutinised by 74 councillors, just isn't going to work.
Roger, you were told by Tracy Dell and by Paul Wynne on Tuesday at the planning meeting, when you said this and said it hasn't got planning permission, you were told outright it has planning permission.
I've got a message from legal which says that the planning what I forget the planning decision, planning consent cannot be issued until after the planning committee have agreed. So the planning consent is not issued and can't be issued until the planning committee meets and agrees or disagrees, whatever it decides to do with the North West Relief Road. So the North West Relief Road has not yet got planning consent. That's the point, and I think that needs to be made plain, and that has come from legal in Shropshire Council, which says that it cannot be issued until.
Point of order, Madam Chairman. This is.
I know. Yeah. The Chairman, is that if we're talking about the business plan, and that's
we're not talking about it.
No, we're not. We're talking about the work programme.
Yeah.
Rob, I'm going to cut it dead there. I'm sorry. I don't think at this point that you can look at, because nothing's in place. So I think we need to leave that. I'm happy to take a vote on whether that is looked at or not, if you're happy to do that.
So my point was about LTP4.
No, and I'm going to issue with that. You've got, I think, LTP, isn't that already somewhere in the work programme? Didn't we put it in the work programme before?
We haven't got any dates in the work programme. That's sorry.
We did. It was before.
We've got a long list of potential things, but we don't currently have an actual work programme.
When would be a suitable date, Mark, to LTP for your opinion?
Sorry, Chair, I missed that. It went.
When would be a suitable time if we have the LTP for?
Well, I think sometime early in the new year would be fine, Chair. I mean, there's so much evolving work in this space. I think you'll probably touch it more than once next year.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not unhappy. I think that should be in the work programme. Yeah, but I think what you're looking for, Rob, is to put it in and have a date for it to go in.
I think so. It's dragged for a long time now.
It has. Is that possible? Or have you got to wait for certain things to be in place before we can look at it?
No, Chair. I mean, we can show you, even if it's work in progress, what's there. The reason I'm slightly hesitant is there are, regular updates to this from government. So we'll tell you what we know as it's evolving, and we can come back very early in the new year with an item on LTP4. and the strategy around all of that. And then maybe from that, then that will help members think about what particular bits they want to focus on as it advances through the year towards final implementation and approval.
Yes, but otherwise, I think it's going to be one of these things which is always draft because the government always comes up with something new, and we'll never see it.
No, okay, I take that on board, Rob. Tom.
I was going to say it's back to the purpose piece. So I think it's very fair in terms of making sure that along with that line in the sand, we've got some dates to work with. It's picking up this now in terms of the is it like Mark's just described there as well? Is it more of a member briefing at this stage about making sure people know what the journey is, but we factor in or we put a date in that does this committee want to have a task and finish group example that looks across the piece? And what was described, I think, in the work progress I'm looking down here is that piece about the interconnectivity between different pieces. It's looking at that relationship between housing and development and all those different aspects. And LTP4 sits within that. So it's almost that bit of that saying we look to have do we look to make sure that there's a member briefing in place so that is members are up to speed, and then it's a question about what frequency that might need to take place then going forward and how that's delivered, depending on the influence of what government's doing and announcing. But at the same time, put a task and finish group proposal together in terms of reference and go out and see if we can get that up and running. So that investigation, that piece of work can run alongside or look at how best it can inform the development of the LTP4 and then comes back to the committee with that report. I think for me I don't mind the committee deciding and choosing to bring reports to the committee and have an officer here and give a report presentation, but that's not the way that the council's been trying to take scrutiny forward. So can we facilitate your interest as a committee in this, if this is the way you choose to go, and deliver it in a way that allows you to investigate it and come back?
I think we've seen with the river quality chair that process can work really well. And I think for there to be member scrutiny of the ongoing work of LTP4, which I think hasn't been there, could be done by a task and finish group set up by this committee. Because I think currently we have an LTP3 which was never actually formally adopted. That's almost still effectively draft, although it's the only thing we've got, and then we still don't have another one. It's a large topic.
So can I draw this in, if that's all right, because we're going round in circles really. So I think the question is, do members want this on the work programme or do they not? And as a task, it would be a task and finish. We'd have a briefing on it sometime in advance online.
So I think, based on what we've heard from Mark as well, I think a briefing would be a sensible step just to make sure everyone's got a common understanding of where we're up to, and then the task and finish group work can move on from that.
And when would we put that in? Because you want a timeline, I'm guessing.
I think so. I think there needs to be a line, doesn't there?
Is March too early?
I'm not. I think all the other plots.
Yeah, you've got loads. You've got loads going.
It's not so much what I've got on. It's about thinking about making sure that task and finish group work takes place at the right point to influence the development of the LTP4 and add value in that process. It's not, as you mentioned with the river water quality, this isn't about putting houses building values in. It's about how to make that work and fit well and take members through that journey. So we can let's look at putting a briefing in based on what we're advised by Mark's advised on, and then we'll also look at getting the task and finish. It's agreed by this committee. Get a task and finish group proposal out to all members, and we will get the timing aligned with the best timing to influence or add value to the LTP4 development.
I think that's fair enough, and a date to be advised, but not too far in the distance. That's the thing. I think what you want, Rob, which I understand, is you want a firm commitment that is going to be looked at within the next 6 to 9 months, maybe. Yeah. Okay, if we can do that, that'd be great. Anybody else want to comment on the work programme? No. So we're happy to have a briefing on that, and then we'll look again. In that case, I think, does anybody have to vote that work programme through as it stands with that added? Yeah. Lovely, thank you. Okay, on that note, we will now move to item 11, which is the date and time of the next meeting, which is Thursday, 25th of January at 2 o'clock, as long as there's no thick snow, but you never know. But can I thank all of you for your input today? It's been really helpful. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well done.
Well,